Welcome to a new cooking episode of Juan's World. And for the next few weeks, up to Christmas and probably after as well, I'm going to be looking at Christmas special recipes that I mostly invented. And so I'm going to call these episodes the Christmas Chameleon Cook. I started last time with mushrooms and pears sautéed in a spicy sauce, and I'm going to do something similar today with apples and mushrooms, with leeks as well, as it happens. But I'm also going to look at pies, and I'm going to look at mince pies, but I'm not going to look at the old-fashioned mince pies of England, where the mince is fruit, suet, and sugar. But I'm going to take the name mincemeat for what it originally meant. That is, going back to the Middle Ages, meat was often mixed with fruit and spices such as allspice and cloves, and made into pies, which were then wrapped in slack pastry or hot water pastry, and sometimes all kinds of designs were made out of the pastry, including castles. And these pies, which were quite substantial, were given as Christmas gifts. And that's why it was called mincemeat, because it was meat but with fruit and spices, and would keep a long time. So I've replicated the idea of meat and fruit, in this case my mincemeat, with which has been maturing for a long time with various fruits, including apples and raisins and mangoes and all kinds of things, marinating in brandy and port and heavily laced with sugar. I've mixed that with my meat, and I'll show you how to make a pie, or at least my idea of a pie. Not with slack paste. I didn't do that yet, but I may do that in future. Slack paste involves lard, which is melted into boiling water, and then the whole hot mixture is folded into flour, and then when it's hot, it's rolled out very quickly, or sometimes just poked with the fingers, into a pie dish, and then filled with the meat, and then baked. And it makes a very stiff pastry that is quite remarkable, used for pork pies still in England, and for veal and ham pie, which I used to make. And so I'll talk about the filling today, and then I'll maybe do some slack paste in a future episode, although I can't find lard in Cambodia, so I'm not sure whether butter would quite cut it, because it needs to be a very solid fat like lard to really work. But on the other hand, I use butter for my Christmas puddings, because I can't find suet either. And so before I get into the two new recipes, let me just talk very, very briefly about my Christmas pudding in the vein of chameleon cooking, because I can't get things like candied peel here, which are very important for Christmas pudding. Candied lemon, candied orange, also crystallized fruits such as cherries. I can't get any of that. So I have had to replace them with dried tropical fruits, pineapple, mango, papaya, and here's a little example of this year's Christmas puddings. And I've done this for the last 2 years. It works out perfectly fine. So let's get into the new recipes. Here's the Chameleon Christmas cook at work again. I've got some apples frying right now. Going to add some mushrooms, maybe some leeks, not sure yet. And it's all going to accompany some pork chops. And I'm certainly going to add something in the way of Christmas spices. Probably allspice cloves and maybe ginger. We'll see. All right, so the apples have browned off a little bit. Now mushrooms, and I'm thinking some leeks as well, although I'm not sure. Let me give it a little ponder. Well, if you know me at all, you know that when I'm pondering something, it's probably going to go in there. So now we have apples, mushrooms, and leeks. Not a lot of mushrooms as it happens, it's mostly apples. And that's the point, because it's going with pork and apples go together. Now I'm going to add some spices, probably allspice, maybe clove, maybe cinnamon, maybe ginger, we'll see. Well, actually, I decided to go with oregano and allspice. Seems like a nice combination. I'm going to stir them up now and let's see how we do. Okay, really looking top notch. The apples have browned nicely, and my next step will be to saute a pork chop in the same fat as this. I'll just put them on the side, saute a pork chop, and that will be my lunch. So here's the completion of my lunch with a couple of pork chops as it happens. I felt a little hungry, and you can see that they're not only sauteing in the fat, but they've also taken on a few of the spices as well. So it's a really Christmassy affair. Now I want to shift gears and talk about replicating a meat pie with fruit, an original of mincemeat from before the meat got dropped in favor of just the fruit and sugar and brandy. And let's move into that experiment. So here is part one of the experiment. Some olive oil heating and some leeks. Could use onions, of course, but I just happen to be partial to leeks, and I think of leeks as a kind of Christmas vegetable, really, because of cockaliki soup, which I always make for Christmas Eve, because my father always made it for Christmas Eve. It's a family custom going back, at least 50 years. So leeks, I'm going to let them take on a little bit of color. And I'm going to add some ground beef. Don't want too much color here, but some. I do want ground beef. Alright, you see this is coming along nicely. Got it on high heat. So far, looks like any beef dish you might care to make. And things are now going to take a slight twist. Once I've got everything good and browned. Alright, so here's the twist. I'm going to add some of my mincemeat that has been maturing for about 2 months actually. So it's very rich, and I don't want to use too much because I do want to make my mince pies. But when it goes, it's got sultanas, raisins, apples, some they're not exactly crystallized fruits, but they're dried fruits from Cambodia: pineapple, mango, papaya, and a little bit of ginger. So in we go. And a little bit of the juice as well. And I'm probably going to have to add some broth. Okay, let's just try that and see how it works. If this works, if I like it, I will make a full pie. But right now I just want to see what it's like by itself. I don't want to do too much, but I want to heat it through. You can see it looks a bit strange, doesn't it? But this may approximate medieval cookery more than I think. As I think I've mentioned, I did make mincemeat with meat when I lived in New York. Even made it with tripe and kept it for a year. But the thing is that there wasn't enough meat in it to really make a meat pie. Even with the meat in it, it still just tasted like old-fashioned mince pie. So now, the acid test, I'm going to taste. Remember, taste, 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 taste. You need to get a little bit of everything, some leeks, some beef, a sultana, and of course the sauce, and let's have a go. Not bad. I think that would make a good pie. Right now this is gonna just mature. I could make a small pie with it, but I'm gonna need to make some slack paste, and I don't have the ingredients for that. So anyway, I want to let this mature in the refrigerator overnight. So I'll see you tomorrow. So I decided not to make the hot water pastry partly because I don't have the lard, and also partly because I think it's a little bit unnecessary at this point, because I just want to see what a pie is like. So I've got some short crust pastry here, which I've placed in a basin and then filled with the meat and fruit, and covered it up and baked, and here we have the finished pie. It's kind of interesting. The filling does not quite cohere in the same way as a veal and ham or a pork pie. And I guess one of the possibilities would be to add some kind of flavored gelatin, as we do with the pork or the veal and ham pie. But right now I just wanted to see what it was like as a pie, and it's actually quite delicious. A little bit strange because it's not really quite a dessert because there's a lot of meat in it. Not really quite a main course. So I might have to play around a little with the proportions, but they seem okay. I mean, it's meaty and it's nice. I did have a couple of slices for my supper last night, and it was really very tasty. And I suspect that with the slack paste, it will really be, quite delectable. I just have to get my mind around making the slack paste. So there's my two Chameleon Christmas recipes, and I will be continuing along with my Unpacking Christmas series, which I'm doing on Fridays. So the cooking and the philosophy, if you like, will run in tandem until probably Epiphany. And meanwhile, if you like this, then you can do several things for me. You could tell your friends. That would be really excellent. And you can also like and subscribe, and tell your friends to like and subscribe as well. So happy Advent, and I will see you in a week for cooking, and on Friday for Unpacking Christmas.